Hello, everyone, and welcome to my session as part of the Inquiry Global Tea Party. I am Chad Hyatt, and I am excited to be sharing my thinking with you today. Let's get started, because if you're like me, you've been doing curriculum planning for years. Many of you in PYP schools have probably struggled to achieve transdisciplinarity in your units. I've seen it and experienced it so many times. We say this is a transdisciplinary unit, but when you read the central idea and learning experiences, it's quite obviously that it's not much more than a good social studies or science unit. I understand because I've built those units too. It's time to move beyond those units. Today, I can help you raise the expectations for transdisciplinary inquiry by sharing a framework that'll help you make it happen. To get us started, let's talk about curriculum and specifically integrated curriculum to build some common knowledge. In the recent PYP documents, different types of integrated curriculum are described as food based on how Choi and Pak did this in their 2006 research. So let's explore these analogies and see just what we've been putting on the table all of these years. A bowl of carrots is a single food choice and represents a single discipline or subject being learned in isolation. A salad is a collection of foods, each keeping their unique identity and representing multidisciplinary learning. This might be a good characterization of our rainforest or dinosaur unit. We're learning about dinosaurs all day, but it is in one subject at a time. Next, we might put a stew on the table. Stew is a collection of foods. Some are keeping their identity, and others are starting to blend together to create something new. This represents interdisciplinary learning. Two or more subjects are being integrated, and sometimes it feels like the one or the other, and the other times it just feels like a whole new experience. Some STEM activities or a HIS-lit class might be characterized like this. Finally, there's cake, and who doesn't want to put cake on the table? Cake is a collection of ingredients that come together to create something so new that the original ingredients are hardly noticeable. This is the vision for transdisciplinary learning. Learning is focused around real-world issues and contexts so that skills and thinking from the disciplines are intertwined in the work and become indistinguishable. For years, my goal has been to create a curriculum of cake, and I've become sickened by so much carrot curriculum being mislabeled. At this point, I'd be willing to take a curriculum of salad or stew. Regardless where you are, I think the framework I share today will help you move towards creating more curriculum cake. In 1975, Michael Halliday, a linguistics professor, proposed an integrated language model. This model has become quite inspirational to my thinking. In his model, Halliday described all language events as integrating the processes of learning language, learning about language, and learning through language. We use and learn language, its structure, syntax, and its semantics in each event. By developing all three, we become literate in language. In 2004, Heidi Mills, Timothy O'Keefe, and Louise Jennings explored Halliday's model as a framework for literacy in their book, Looking Closely and Listening Carefully, Learning Literacy Through Inquiry. They showed that teachers can integrate all three to purposefully design learning that develops literacy. Today, I'm proposing that we ask ourselves, what's it mean to be literate in any subject and across them? To be literate in a subject, we must be users of the subject, understanding the big ideas of it and making use of the subject to understand other subjects in the world. This might be described as disciplinary literacy. To be literate in a transdisciplinary world means to be an inquirer in that world. This isn't a new idea. Short, Harsty, and Burt proposed this connection between literacy and inquiry in 1996 in creating classrooms for authors and inquirers. Our world requires us to engage with it, seek to understand the complexity of the issues, and use these skills and understanding across context to achieve greater ends, such as developing a better, more peaceful world. So let's take a closer look at the framework. When we think about learning a subject or anything, we have to consider what skills and dispositions allow us to engage and participate in that learning. When we are learning about a subject or anything, we have to draw connections between factual bits of knowledge and develop conceptual understandings based on the big ideas that matter in those disciplines and situations. When we are learning through a subject or issue, we're using it as a context for learning about other subjects or issues. Taken all together, I believe that this model provides a framework for engaging in both disciplinary and transdisciplinary inquiry. It is rare in my experience to find a fully developed unit of inquiry that meets these expectations. This isn't good enough. I believe we can use this framework to raise the expectations for transdisciplinary inquiry that we design as teachers. So let's dig even deeper into this framework. I'll start by making more sense of the learning about component. It is here that our expectation is raised from knowing to understanding. This component has to be built from concepts. It will generally include both disciplinary and transdisciplinary conceptual understandings that can be applied by agentic learners in new situations. Now, in the learning through component, I want to raise the expectation. Let's move from talking to acting. This component can be viewed as the unit's context or vehicle for our study. This might be engagement with case studies, problem-based learning scenario challenges, or significant issues of local and global importance, like the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Either way, we want to set conditions that encourage student action and agency. In the past, we might have viewed this component simply as using one subject to learn about another, such as reading about social studies or doing math and science. But in these cases, we were mainly learning about just one subject and relegating the other subject to an implicit role. I think that by being more purposeful about the context for a unit, we can raise the expectations for the transdisciplinary inquiry. In the last component, I've modified Halliday's name for it from learning to be. I believe this encourages us to design learning that moves students from doing subjects to being experts in the fields of those subjects and beyond. When we change the focus from just doing science to being scientists or doing history to being historians, we raise the expectations for learners and ourselves. We have to see skill and disposition development as an ongoing apprenticeship. Students use these skills and dispositions to truly engage in transdisciplinary inquiry and work to solve some of the most significant local and global issues of our time. As we are planning for such an inquiry, we have to ask ourselves which experts matter and what skills and dispositions would they bring to the table in regards to acting within the context in order to develop the identified knowledge and understanding. We identify the skills and dispositions, set success criteria based on them, and on our student agency to develop them, giving feedback to feed forward at just the right moments. In closing, a powerful unit of inquiry integrates the acquisition of skills and dispositions, develops knowledge and understanding, and is driven by a meaningful cause. A unit without one of the components lowers expectations. A unit with them all is delicious cake. I hope this transdisciplinary inquiry framework will spark lots of discussion in the coming hour. I hope that you see its value in developing the complex literacies of students, and especially in developing them as inquirers for now and in the future. It just might be our only hope for that better and more peaceful world. Thank you very much. I look forward to engaging with you in the upcoming discussion. If you would like to have access to the slides, please use the bit.ly Hyatt T-shares on your screen. Thanks again. One of the other things to remember is, sometimes we're building transdisciplinary units really well, and sometimes we're building transdisciplinary experiences really well. And the two are different, and so a unit, if you start building more transdisciplinary experiences, then that might start opening up the realm for the whole unit to become more transdisciplinary. And so, you could use this framework just thinking about a single experience within a unit from that framework as well.
Great. We've got also Milagros here with her hand up.
Hi, yes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Nice to see fellow teachers here. I was going to ask a question and share something because I teach English as a second language actually. So it's quite a challenge to do that, especially with the younger kiddos. So I was seeing like uh, here Susie say it so much better than I could. Like there is a struggle with literacy because we are teaching children to read. How do we integrate that, especially focused when they are non-English speakers?
Yeah. And I think, the starting point for any language learner is what they can do. And so, even if you're, like we use the WIDA levels. And so at the beginning, some of the language that they can use, well as like one word answers and such. And so as we are engaging with them, we can build off of that amount of literacy for our questioning and such. Introducing a lot of academic vocabulary is definitely going to come through in these experiences. I think you're going to have to even be mindful of all the different forms of literacy, art, music, dance, and even mathematics are all forms of literacy. And they, all come into play when you're thinking about an English language learner, and not just the reading, the writing, and such.
Yeah.
Exactly, and families can play a great role there.
We're starting to work with PYP. We're like applying for it, and we're already using it in the entire school, and it's great because you can see the shift in the little kiddos and how they are actually not just receiving information but reflecting on it and researching for more. And it's that's they're little and they're so cute, and it's such a great feeling, and I love it about it. But yeah, thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much.
In the chat,
We've got
Elaine has expounded on that, so you might look back through the chat, because I'm sure we have a lot of early learning experts in there.
Definitely. We've got our Kirta Kale here who would like to add something. So let's do it.
That's Kirtida Kale. Yeah, hi. Hi, Chad. Hi, Juan.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you, so usually when we try to design a transdisciplinary unit, and like you said, you bring in experiences from different, build like transdisciplinary experiences and then go towards there. But what I've observed is that a lot of times these experiences don't really add to learning that much. So how much is, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. How much or how great should the experience be to truly, is it okay to just have some flimsy or some weak link to a certain discipline, or is it important to have like a really strong link which leads to a deeper learning and better meaning making?
Okay.
I just wanted to know your thoughts about that.
Yeah. So, like in the PYP, we identify 6 subject areas, and you are not required by any means, and it's not even encouraged to integrate all 6, so to speak. If you want to look for meaningful links with those subjects. And so I would start by naming, not only my transdisciplinary understandings, but I would name some disciplinary understandings with that, and I would look at my success criteria, and I would do the same thing. Create some I can statements of in regards to maybe some disciplinary specific things, and also from a transdisciplinary angle. And I can share some examples again, after this with you, all to especially through the Facebook site and such. We can put some of those examples up there. But I think when you start naming things from both the transdisciplinary and the disciplinary piece, then that's where everything becomes a meaningful learning experience. And if it's not, I'm not sure it really has a place in the unit. Okay, I would say disregard it. Okay, if it's fluff, or if it's not really adding to those work towards that success criteria or towards that conceptual understanding. And not everything's, each one of those things is going to be built in one session, just like the saying that Rome wasn't built in a day, that it's going to take repeated engagement over time, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, whatever sessions to get to those success criteria and those conceptual understandings.
So Chad, adding on to what Kirtada just said, there's a couple of questions in the chat that are really, really meaningful here. Katrina says, how do you balance required state standards with transdisciplinary cake? And then they talk about forced integration, how forcing integration might be counterproductive. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for many of us, that are dealing with standards of sorts, that's where I get a lot of my concepts from. Okay, so I'm really analyzing my standards, and Rachel French and Julie Stern are concept-based learning experts, and they have a lot of stuff out on the internet that shows you how to look at some of these standards and such from that lens. And you can start pulling out the concepts from them. The other thing I like to look at is the Bloom's verbs. And when I see words like analyze or explain and such, I know they're wanting the standard to go to the conceptual level. And so I really spend a lot of time on those standards in the development of the unit. What are they really what concepts are they really getting at here that they want us to spend a lot of time so that students can explain or students can analyze these aspects. And even if they're written from a topical standpoint, I can start thinking from that conceptual piece and such. So that helps me definitely from the concept angle. And again, also some of those verbs tell me what's the kind of science or what's the kind of studies or art or music or whatever it is that is integrating into the shoot. What are the ways of being that I want the students to be able to engage with.
Definitely. We've got Ola here who would also like to add something on. So, yep. Ola, can you hear us?
Hello, everybody. Chad, so my question is, so let's take a scenario of we're planning for a new unit of inquiry and that we have the specialists join in. What are 2 or 3 questions that you want the specialists to think about before coming to the planning meeting and to help them start thinking about transdisciplinarity?
But, I really want them to, think of themselves as a generalist. And so it really depends on where we are in the planning session. If we are building a new unit from scratch, then I want them to come at that unit from a generalist, that we want to figure out what is it that's important for students to know in our world. And then from there, we can start thinking about, okay, now which subjects actually support this, and their subject may really support that and their subject may not support that. Okay, so I don't want to force them to come to a meeting and not like honor where their curriculum or their scope and sequence with that curriculum their and such, where that doesn't I don't want them to have to change everything around out of sequence, just like many of us would not want to change a lot of things around in some of the sequence where we introduce things. And so I want them to first come as a generalist, and then we look at every subject from, how could this subject build a deeper understanding of the concepts and such that we've identified here, and kind of go from there. And then what does it look like to be an artist, or look like to be a musician in sorts, from the lens of this concept, and start to identify some of those aspects.
That sounds great. Brian was asking, what's the most efficient way to involve the kids in the planning for the next unit? So
Great.
he hit the nail.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I figured out a most efficient way or anything like that. I think, the first step for many of us is to include them, and how difficult that can be. And there are some examples where I would love to see children invited into a planning session with us, that again, we name ambassadors and things like that in our classroom to welcome our guests and such, but I think they are much more capable and competent to take a even further leadership role, or maybe it's other students that could be curriculum ambassadors, and where we sit around with them at a moment, and maybe we eat lunch with them or something, and we say, here's what we're thinking for the next unit. Okay, and we're envisioning this idea, and maybe we kind of start concept mapping things with them to see, and giving them, well, what do you think, how do you think we could, getting their opinion. Well, what kind of engagements should we consider here? How do you feel about this? Is this going to be exciting? What about this provocation? Is this going to get everybody's attention and really hook them, and you think it's going to start generating questions and such? And if they're like, that doesn't really excite me. I think, kids nowadays would like, and then they start giving us a lot of insight. And I think we wait till we've got the unit set before we often bring them in, which is a good start. Okay, it's a good start. If you haven't brought them in at all, at least bring them in then. But if we can even bring them in before, earlier in the process and such.
And
go ahead.
That connects very well with what Kari says in the next session, because it might sound like, only secondary students or PYP 4 or 5 students can co-plan. No, she talks about how she does it with early years. So that connects very well with that.
Excellent. So don't leave after this session. Stay. So.
Definitely. We've got Bina Fer there. So if you wish, you're in.
I have a question. Like many times, children, like we can talk with them and they just don't able to express themselves openly. Like they wanted to say something, but they can't be able to express themselves. They can't explore their thoughts out completely. So what can we do in that case?
I think a lot, again, I would read, there are some literacies that every child has. And so maybe, in some of those cases, art is a great entryway into that conversation. And then we can help them interpret that art, and say, here's, tell us a little bit more about that. And then, maybe help them elaborate from there. But I think, that is a definite window that I would maybe invite them from.
It happens many times with them, like they all are confused and many of the thoughts just scramble in their mind, and just they are all like mashed up with their thoughts, and just they want to speak something, but they even can't understand themselves what they want to say or something like that.
Yeah.
How can we make
I think the other piece to that is to think about the other languages that they bring to our classroom. And if they can't say it in the language of instruction, then they perhaps in the family and home language they can, and perhaps it's kind of like an interview with the parents or something like that, and maybe that's where they feel comfortable, and so they can the parents could help us collect that information. But I think thinking about, again, from some of the many literacies and from the many languages that they bring to us, all those things can play a factor.
Great, thank you very much. Nirali, are you around?
Okay, so yeah, it was interesting to listen, chat to many of the ideas and some of the questions that some teachers were asking. Having worked in the IB school, interestingly, visible thinking tools come very handy when we work with younger children. And I think the whole idea of Reggio Emilia's approach of 100 languages of learning, that's what I have used when I used to work with early years, and having them frame questions to be part of the IB planning.
Great.
So using questioning techniques from the visible thinking tools was very helpful. And yes, initially, one of the ideas from one of the teachers who shared about how do we have specialist teachers in part of the curriculum, like the art and the dance and the drama. I think the chalk talk works as a very handy tool for the planning team, where you sit on a blank paper, putting the concept in the center, and then if nobody talks, everybody just puts their thoughts, and then you use color pencils to just join the thoughts, and then you come up with transdisciplinary links. And through that, then you pull out the experiences, and then, so it's like a 4 or 5 hours project, but then yeah, at the end, you'll have a nice plan ready to put it into the PYP planner. So I thought something from experience I wanted to share, and that's it.
Definitely.
I appreciate that. Those are great pieces of advice. And the nice thing about with the those routines are, if we explain to students about the type of thinking that is coming out of that experience. Here's why we are engaging with this tool at this moment, and so then it becomes a tool that they own. Okay, a strategy, just like any reading strategy is a tool that they end up owning. These visible thinking routines from Making Thinking Visible and the work of Harvard Project Zero there, then are kind of in their back pocket. And we would talk about, what's a routine that maybe a scientist would use in this situation, or what's the routine that a climatologist would use in this situation. And so again, they become tools for the experts. And again, the agency that's built into that, the act of being, it's all there. So thank you very much.
Definitely. Sarah, are you around?
Yes, I am. Okay, firstly,
Perfect.
thank you so much for arranging this session. It's actually great to collaborate with IB facilitators from around the world. So a big thumbs up and thank you. I'm just quickly gonna share two things. Firstly, I would just like to share with whoever is here that before we start any unit, we conduct our curriculum mapping sessions where our subject teachers and the homeroom teachers, they sit together and try to build up transdisciplinary connections wherever possible. So this might help people who are struggling with the subject integration. Secondly, I have a question that for who we are and how we express ourselves, these are the themes which offer a great scope for integrated embedded learning or transdisciplinary learning taking place. But when we talk about the themes, how we organize ourselves or others, it's a little difficult to integrate other subjects. So is it okay if it's not, the other subjects are not being integrated in those themes, or are there any tips for us that can help us create better connections? Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that I will share with you is some examples from a couple of experiences. Okay, for one, sometimes when we write like central ideas and such for a unit, we get stuck in a certain process. Okay, I love Lynn Erickson's work with concept-based learning, but sometimes I think when we are working to try to get to a conceptual understanding that's at a level 3, as she describes it, we sometimes lose the transdisciplinarity of it, and from a central idea standpoint, I think that can get in the way. And so when you start thinking about a central idea and you start looking at the words that may be really starting to lock you in a subject, okay? And I'll give you an example. But when I taught 3rd grade, one of my favorite units was out of how we organize ourselves. And it was this unit where we organized a little society in our classroom, and we had our own economy, and the central idea originally was that citizens make decisions or make economic decisions that affect society. Okay, and so then when you start reflecting on that central idea, as I did later in my career, because at the time I didn't know any better and such, but at this point in time, I'm like, that word economy is really, the economic is really holding us to that idea. And so when I take, citizens make decisions that affect society, then okay, then I can start thinking about scientists and their inventions and such that come into play with such a thing, and or aspects of that. And then I even started thinking, well, maybe the idea that citizens isn't even the right word there, because I think of artists. Artists make decisions that impact people. And so if I change that to just humans, and so, and then the society word at the end, I thought, well, maybe that's even trapping me in more of a social studies focus, because if I change that to humans make decisions that affect themselves and others, then I can start bringing in PE and looking at things like team chemistry, and the decisions that you make as part of a team in sports and such. And so literally just kind of chipping away at each of the different words in that central idea. And one thing that it says in the new PYP documents is it does not say that even the central idea has to be a conceptual understanding. It refers to it as a conceptual focus. Okay, and so as a conceptual focus, where are you really going with this, and being able to open it up for those multiple subject areas. In one of our schools, we looked at something regarding some science. We looked at some of the cross-cutting standards, and in that situation, we ended up stripping the central idea down to just structure affects function. Structure affects function instead of this big lengthy thing. But from there, we've identified several disciplinary understandings, several transdisciplinary understandings that we can go at and achieve in the actual unit. But to kind of build from, we had it down to just that simple concept verbs concept idea, and that really opened up our planning session to really think about the transdisciplinarity of that unit.
Absolutely. I would like to add on something that Raquel Mamaril said a while ago, but I think it really connects very well with transdisciplinary learning, and especially doing it in lower primary when people have some struggles to bring the kids' voices on the table. She said, with regards to planning for the next unit, what we have done in school is ask the students what they want to learn, how they want to learn it, even with the lower PYP students. They were given suggestions either verbally or writing on sticky notes. And though they have minimal responses, the teachers are acknowledging their suggestions, therefore giving them the impression that the teacher is giving importance to their thoughts. Not only the impression, but actually changing our thinking too, right? As teachers, not only making them feel that we care, but actually caring about what they are saying. I believe the more that they see that their suggestions are done in class, the more they will be engaged in becoming agents. Voice, choice, and ownership. It's definitely the key for all of us to plan meaningful transdisciplinary learning. When they feel that, hey, this is I'm in the team, my choice matters.
Absolutely.
We've got Natalie here, who would like to add something too.
I can.
Hi, Natalie.
Okay. My question is, so let's say, a lot of us already have units that we've written, and we might think that, oh, they're on their way to being, transdisciplinary. If we want to take it up to, beyond, as you're talking about, with this language of learning through, learning about, where would you suggest would be a good starting point? Like, what should we look at first? Learning experience, concept, where do you think we should start first?
I would start with the learning about, and again, I felt comfortable, and that really was when you really think about what it is that is perhaps really holding you back. Is it the conceptual nature of it? Does that seem to be holding you back? Does it seem to be, or if those pieces are into play, then perhaps look at some transdisciplinary experiences. And one thing that we recently did just this year was define, what's the difference between a disciplinary experience and a transdisciplinary experience? And really start to name those things and say, okay, and so let's kind of use that as a guide for when we're thinking about these, and and kind of go from there. The other piece I might recommend is just starting with like that triple Venn diagram that I use in the presentation, and just start, go get away from the planner, because perhaps even it is just kind of tunnel visioning things because we're just moving from box to box and such like that, and perhaps opening it up on a piece of chart paper or something in a new format that they really haven't experienced may be able to open their mind to new ideas, to see some of those aspects. And you know, and so I think when it comes down to it, you know, in the center could be the central idea, you know, of the unit, and is it really allowing us to, again, engage with these understandings, engage with the students as these experts? Is it allowing us to pull in these contexts that we've identified in the learning through? That, again, it just might break up people's ordinary thinking to be able to come up with something new. So.
Would it make sense to like to look at, because I'm just thinking like real world people just rewrote a planner and then you're like, but it makes sense to look at the planner, look at the learning experiences and think which category might it fit into? Would it fit into learning through? Would it fit into, and then if not, like, how can we get it there?
Yeah, and actually, you know, yeah, what aspects of the learning experience could go where, you know, and even if there are some, maybe some of the learning experiences only have 2 of the 3, and that can go in those little sections of the overlap and such. And the real where it integrates all 3 could go in the middle. Yeah, I mean, you could take a whole unit apart and boom, 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 with every one of the listed learning experiences and such, and assessments. That I think that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie, my friend.
That's great. Thank you very much, guys. We just ran out of time. So we just went all through the 50 minutes,
right?
And it just went like nothing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So I would like to thank Chad first because he's been working so hard to spread the word and bring us all together, bring all these amazing ideas and expertise. So first of all, thank you very much, Chad. And
my pleasure. And
thank you all for being patient and for being courageous and open to realizing that we are human and we make mistakes and we learn from them.